We are here for another episode of Always Another Game, where I grab a fascinating athlete to share their stories on the transfer of skills from sports into the real world. And on today's episode, we have a financial mentor and the founder of Wealth with Sadia and former cross-country runner. We have Sadia Ali. How's it going, Sadia?
Hey, Shaun. Yeah, really good. Thanks. How are you?
Yes, very good. It's lovely. Actually, this is the first time we've spoke like this. We spoke a little bit in the DMs. We know each other on LinkedIn, where actually a lot of my guests are coming from. But it's, our first conversation is a podcast. So we might as well do it the hard way.
Exactly. Why not? Jump in the deep end.
Exactly. So yes, thank you so much for coming on. I'm really keen on this topic because we are going to cover the financial side, which is quite a taboo subject still today. People don't like talking about money, like talking about finance. But what I loved about LinkedIn is there were a number of experts, money experts, financial advisors, raising the topic and making actually the entry point easier for people like myself to get started. So I'm really keen to see where your journey's gone from being a cross-country runner to dealing with finance. But first and foremost, who is Sadia Ali?
How do you want me to answer that?
Any way you like. Just tell the audience a little bit, anything about you, hobbies, interests, who you are, what you like. The platform is yours.
Okay. So, hey, everyone. I'm Sadia. Thanks so much for having me on. So nowadays, I'm the founder of Wealth with Sadia. I run my business full time. Still massively into sports, which I'm sure we'll cover. It's taken a very different turn, but it's a big aspect of my life. Other hobbies are, other than the gym and working, there's not a lot that I do. I'm a very simple, very simplistic person. I spend a lot of time with my family, especially now that I am self-employed. I'm able to do that. So where I grew up, I was born and grew up is Oxford. So spending lots of time with my family, which is lovely. I think getting to know my parents as they're aging has been great. But yeah, I think at the moment, a lot of my time is focused on growing my business. It's my baby. So yeah.
Yeah, I can relate to that. I love business now. Now before I always say I was just personal training. I would take a session and I'll see you next one or see you next week. When I kind of moved into the online space of coaching, I realized I had nothing. I had nothing in place for business, and I'm like, oh, I need to do this, and but I love that. I love that there's always that challenge, and there is always something to do. It keeps you busy, keeps you really busy.
When did you make that transition?
So it was lockdown. I've shared the story a couple of times on here, but I did everyone did the free workouts with Joe Wicks or with me. Yeah. So I did one, and at the end of every session, I gave a free call out to somebody, just to chat, because I knew, that we weren't able to meet up. But I was giving people advice, and people were coming back and going, "I love this. I used it and it worked." And I'm like, "Wow, maybe this is a thing. Maybe I could actually, move into this." But yeah, I absolutely loved it. But it's so funny. You said you grew up in Oxford. Now, if any ice hockey players, UK ice hockey players are listening here, the first thing that when we hear Oxford is it's really hard to drive around, and the car park at the ice rink is horrendous, or it was anyway. It was 1 in, 1 out system, even if there was spaces. So there was quite often we used to queue to get in, and the players would have to get out of the car and go and get changed whilst the parents sat in the car and wait for a car parking space. But that's my relationship with Oxford anyway.
Oh, so you came here, you've been here quite you went to Oxford quite often to
just literally to the ice rink, like most places in the UK. I've been around, but literally to the ice rink and then gone again.
Oh, I love ice. I love that place. Yeah, I went there quite a lot when I was younger.
Oh, it was ice rinks were like cool back in the day, though. You'd go your skating sessions. I think it's lost its way a little bit, because I remember going down and the places were rammed, absolutely rammed.
Yeah, no, I was terrible at it. And then we used to go with school even, actually. And I got really good at it, and yeah, it's so fun. Cold, but
yeah.
fun.
But that's probably one of your many sports you spoke about. And you spoke about a lot of sports when you were younger, and you've also just previously mentioned that there is still a huge sporting element now. What was your earliest memory of playing sport?
Earliest memory of playing sport. We used to go as a family. So I've got a big family, but then I've got a huge, wider family as well. We used to spend a lot of time together, often going to the park. So we had like neighboring parks near where we live, and we'd play football or cricket because there were so many of us. I think that's I think sport's such a big part of my life. Like, I think even my brothers, actually, they massively support Liverpool. So that was a massive. We'd always be watching football. Sports is just a huge aspect of like growing up. It was a huge aspect of growing up for me, playing it, watching it, everything.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it is the environment you get brought up in is a huge amount. I started ice hockey because my parents went over to visit my relatives that lived in Canada, and they took him to an ice hockey game, loved it, realized there was a team in Slough, which was just down the road from where I grew up, and started watching it. And the next thing we know, I was 2 years old and I was skating on the ice. So family has a huge part to play in where somebody starts. What were the sports you were first involved in? Because I know the cross country came a little bit later.
Yeah. So I think part of how I realized that I was good at the running aspect was we used to play, as I said, with my family, we used to play football, just for a mess about at the park. And I realized everyone realized I was really good, because I was fast. I could get to one side to the other because I was fast. And I really enjoyed it. I love being active and connecting with my family like that, because it is so boy dominant. And my dad would get involved and take us out, and yeah. Sorry, I think I diverged from the question, but yeah, I think football was the one. Football's big.
Yeah. And that, as you said, that had a big carryover to why you got into cross country. And what I think a lot of the time is maybe we don't always necessarily see is that when you see a talent, an attribute, it doesn't necessarily mean it's kind of like one size fit all. Like you look fast at football. Oh, well, then you should just go and play football. Well, no, there's other areas where a quick athlete can be beneficial. You could be beneficial in American football. They have to be extremely fast.
Exactly.
100 meter running, they've got to be incredibly fast. So it's looking at the skill, and that's one thing I tried to do with my boys. My boys are still young, but it's kind of give them the option to try different things to see where their skills lie.
Yeah.
And then you can then start to teach a sport around that. So I love that they kind of saw the speed element of it. Now, it was your PE teacher that saw something that little extra. Tell us a little bit more about that kind of transition into cross-country running.
Yeah, so any sports day, I was all over it. The first thing I'd always sign up for was the 100 meter, so it's the sprints, but then also I'd always love to do like a longer run. And it was strange actually, because like most of the time you're either sprinting or you're long distance. And for me, I loved both of them. And actually there's an element of the sprints obviously come into the long distance as well at the end or at parts of different intervals. So I think, I just really loved sports day. I was really good at it. And I think it was in year 7 that my PE teacher, Mr. Fisher, and we had middle schools in Oxford, so he had a 3-tier schooling system, and he actually not followed me like that, but he actually went to my upper school as well. He actually started teaching at my upper school, so he was part of my school in middle school and upper. And I think it was one sports day that he saw I think I was doing like a 2000 meter, and he had one of those things, he was like cheering me on. And then afterwards, I think he just saw that I was going like the pace that I was going at and how consistent I was going rather than burning out. And he just came and had a chat with me afterwards. He asked to speak to me, and he, I think that's how it started. He was just like, I see like you really enjoy it and you're good at it, and would you be interested in talking about how you could take this further? And for me, it was just fun. I didn't really think anything of it, but that's how it started.
It's such a huge influence, isn't it? From parents to PE teachers, just even to school teachers or anybody that's just observing, that sees a talent and decides, okay, yeah, actually maybe they do have something that not many people know about me. I ran 1500 at school, and I was not built to run 1500 meters. My body shape, my body type has always been slightly shorter, stocky, built for contact sport. But there was one conference team. When in hockey, you play for Southeast England for me, and you're trying to get in the England team. And one of their things was we had to run a mile in 7 minutes. We were young, so this was maybe 13, something like that. So I practiced over and over and over and over again. Well, a mile is very close to 50. It's mile 1600. I can't remember, something like that. So I practiced. So then I became very, very good. But then I got a huge wake up call when my teacher said, similar to you, I can't remember if it was a county trial or it was an inter school event rather than sports day. When I went up against proper 1500 meter runners, I made to look real silly, real quick. But yeah, there's the similarity.
You feel that, can't you? But they might have felt the same as well. But the fact that you did it, that's yeah.
Well, it's a tough distance, isn't it? Really, because like you said, you're not sprinting and you're not marathon running. You're kind of in that middle ground, those 800s, 1500s. It's a tough mental and physical challenge. Would you say?
Definitely, like the pace that you have to keep up. And what we'd see at school is obviously like people are just doing it for fun. So people will race ahead, or like if you're doing it in with people, everyone will be like, yeah, let's do it together. But then as soon as you start, they'll try and completely outpace you and sprint, and then obviously they burn out. And so when you asked me that question, actually the link, and I know we're going to get to it, it's that pacing yourself and understanding that you have a finite amount of energy, and you've got to get through. You've got to get through it with that bit of energy. And so, yeah, it's definitely a learning process. So the fact that you practice so much, that would have come in handy. Just knowing how to deal with that.
I could talk about. I got so many fun stories, because when you say there about people going out too quick, I always remember. I remember one race that I did, and I don't know, like when we did our sports days, we actually did it at an athletics track, so it had a little stadium. So it was such a vibe, such a big vibe. And this one lad took off and was miles ahead in the first one, and I'm like, has he been training? Like, I should be winning this. Yeah. And the crowd was cheering him on. He only managed one lap. He couldn't run anymore. He was absolutely done from that first one. But it was so funny. You're just like, oh my God, like, is he really gone? Is he really that good? No, he just didn't really know how to race, and the crowd was cheering him on, and he just went nuts. But
it's completely different to sprinting, because with sprinting you just go for it and that's it. But you have to be so much more strategic when you haven't, when you're doing longer distances.
Yeah. So what was it then? Because I remember cross country at school, and I'm sure many listeners, maybe around my age, we all did it, right? Our teachers made us do cross country at some point. And I remember kids hiding in bushes. I remember kids getting shouted at because they're walking. It wasn't for many a fun experience. What was it about cross country to you that you love so much?
So we didn't ever do cross country at school. Okay. We were really, really fortunate, actually. We had an athletic track, and then we also had where I trained later on, quite a famous Roger Bannister athletic track in Oxford. That's where I used to train. But we never actually did cross country. We never did that far of a distance. Honestly, it was my teacher, my PE teacher, Mr. Fisher, that said, let's go to one of these events. So we went to one of these events, and it was more like a practice, but there was lots and lots of people. and I did really well. I think when you do really well in something and you're good at it, and there's an element that you enjoy as well, then when those two marry each other, I think it can just stem from there, right? And I think that's what happened with me and cross country.
Yeah, I think that does get lost quite, not all the time, but obviously I'm very early stages of being an athlete parent, and a huge element of success comes from enjoyment. Now, enjoying it and being good, I've been through that in the ice hockey world. I love playing ice hockey. I had the passion to improve and get better, and I see that correlation. But I think that starting point is so important, that the kid has to enjoy the sport. Otherwise, you're just swimming upstream all the time to try and get them there. Or even if they have a talent, they have to love what they do for it to be successful eventually in the long run.
Totally agree. Yeah, absolutely agree. You can't have like just one. You can't just be good at it. You have to enjoy it as well, because it's such a strenuous sports. Is people just, when you watch it, you don't realize actually how challenging it is actually. So if you're not enjoying it, despite how good you are at it, it's not going to go that much further, I think.
No, and when times get tough, it'll be easy to quit and not try your best, and then it can be a slippery slope, right? Mentally and physically, it can be a slippery slope.
Exactly.
So obviously you have mentioned that your PE teacher, Mr. Fisher, shout out to Mr. Fisher, that he had a big implement on it. But when you were running, a lot of people, when you hear the word running and you hear the word distance, again, it's negative, it's boring. What was it about the run that, and I know you were good, but what was it about the run that you really loved that made you stick out and improve?
I think once you do it and you reach that finish line and you just feel like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. Like when I did like my first big runs for sports day, just for fun, and you reach the end, that feeling of accomplishment, that you've achieved something. I think that is something that's big in my life. I know it drives, I'm very goal orientated just in general. So, to set yourself a goal, quite a big goal, and then to train for it, and then to, when you're actually doing it, to reach the end, for me that whole process is such a buzz, I guess. Like I really enjoyed that whole process, because I knew that despite how hard and challenging it might be, I knew getting to that finish line, that feeling is unbeatable.
Yeah, you can't explain. I've had so many conversations about people that have won events, gold medals, and it's the same thing. Like, you can't replicate that high of winning something that you've set your mind to, or it has been a big goal. Yeah. Yes, there's other areas in your life that you get these high from, but that elation, that mixed emotion, you can't replicate it. Even if you went back and played sport recreationally and you won a game or a lower level, it's not the same as in that competitive nature. So I get that. But I did also love the fact that you were saying process there, because there is a big topic in the sporting world at the moment, is that should the result be celebrated as much as it does, or should we start to celebrate the actions and the steps towards that event more? That we celebrate trying, we celebrate working, rather than actually just the reward. Because, for instance, if you didn't and you hadn't done very well in that first race, this could be a different story.
Yeah, no, 100%. I think the process is super important, but it's the results that shine through. And that's what, that's one of the things that like ties in with finances, isn't it? It's that you can put in all the work, but it does come down to sometimes on the day. Like, I know this is quite a big topic in sports as well. Like, on the day, it might just not be your day. And I know it happens with women a lot. Hormonal changes, like our body is so responsive to things that we're going through. So you can put in all the work, but you might not get the result that you want. And
and if you look at yourself with running, I don't know actually how many you always come up against, but just say, for instance, you feel great. You've done everything you can to prepare. This is your day, but so has 5 other people. And 5 other people have been doing it a year longer than you, 6 months.
Overwhelming.
it can make such a difference. That 1% can make everything. And then, you go one step behind because they started stronger. Now you've got the psychology element. Oh, maybe I'm not as good. And now you're fighting, and you kind of feel like you're in thick mud. It's such a psychological element as well. But yeah, the result is great. And yeah, if we kind of, move it towards the financial side, because I guess a lot of what I've learned with investments is more so kind of like the long game, is little often, be patient, and your reward will pay off eventually. And I guess that kind of relates same to the racing. So where did finances start for you?
So I think at a certain point I knew that education was the route towards the life that I wanted to create for myself. So growing up in Oxford, it's officially a city, but it's basically a village. I spent a lot of time in London, and the contrast for me was huge. I knew I wanted to be in London. And I knew, and also like I'd see certain things in my family and like from the cultural side of things, and I just thought I need to get a good paying job, and that's how I'm going to change my life. So I started focusing on my education. I was a massive nerd anyway, and just progressed through that way. And again, a teacher, massive influences from teachers. I went to really I went to a community school, so often you'll find like amazing teachers at these community schools that are not very good schools, but they go there and like they genuinely want to make an impact and help. And I had the most incredible economics teacher, and he'd actually taught my whole family before me. And yeah, I loved economics. I went and studied it at uni. I then went to law school after that, and then I started my career straight away in investment management, and that's how I started.
Yeah,
that's where it all happened.
It just sounds like whether you got lucky in terms of the schools you went to, or the teachers that fell upon you, or it was just kind of meant to be. But there is. I hope any teachers listening do realize the influence that you have. You may not realize it. You may, the cards that you get at the end of the year might not say it enough. But I think, I'm not sure if I have mentioned them on the podcast, but there was two that clearly stick out in my mind. One for just who she was as a person, was an incredible person, and the other had a big influence in business for me. It was my business studies teacher. Why did I take business studies? I don't know. I didn't have a drive for business, to be in business at the time, but I absolutely loved the topic, and the teacher backed that up as well. And I think she's actually still on LinkedIn. I've mentioned her a couple of times on there.
Amazing.
But it kind of shows that it doesn't always happen, but teachers, if you are listening, you have a huge impact. Somebody is inspired by you. Somebody is listening.
That's why some of my really, really good friends went on to be teachers, actually, and they ended up falling out with it because they're not rewarded in the right way. And for me, that's so sad, because my experience at school and with some of my teachers, they changed my life. Like Mr. Drake, my economics teacher, I would not be who I am, where I am, if it was not for that person. If it was not for him, I would not be the founder of Wealth with Sadia, or had gone to study economics, or had gone into investment management. He is the reason. And it's amazing, because in this is completely going off topic, but in law we talk about like causation and like why you're where you are and how far you can go back. And he just sticks out so prominently for me, for where I am. So yeah, teachers have a massive impact on our life.
Causation sounds like a better word. I call it accidental intent. Just accidentally fall on everything, but there's been intent behind all your movements. There's been a reason behind
everything. Happens for a reason.
But you just don't know. You don't know what will come. But if you know you're working towards something and you're learning and you're going with it, guess what? You're going to fall on it at some point.
Yeah, or if you're open to it, because sometimes at the time you don't know why it's happening, but then later on you can look back and be like, wow, like if X, Y didn't happen, this wouldn't have happened. And it's crazy. That's why I just like flowing with life is so important for me, because I've seen so many times how that's just worked out so well.
Yeah, because I'm a big believer of removing friction. And obviously with what I do, a lot of that is food relationship, exercise relationship, just self-care. When you move that friction, it reduces a lot of internal stress. And when we're kind of on this topic of, oh, we don't know where we would have gone, at school, they always ask you, and you've got careers advisors in, what do you want to do? I don't know.
Yeah.
I want to, like, I knew I wanted to play ice hockey professionally because I was at 16, I was playing. But, and, you know, everyone kept saying, you need a backup plan. And I know I need a backup plan, but I have no idea what I want to do.
Yeah. But you're not thinking like that as well, right? Because you're so focused on this working.
Exactly, yeah. And it was years down the line where I got a PT. I gave in. I needed help. I was old enough to pay for it myself. So I got a PT, and I'm like, I can do this. And it was just complete accidental intent. But, you know, if you go, like you said, like you go back causation, I was training. I was trying to better myself. I wanted to be the best on the ice. It led me to a point of going, okay, I need help.
Yeah.
And the rest is history.
Well, that reminds me of like luck. When people talk about luck, I feel like you put in all this work and there is an element of luck, but you only get that luck or can take advantage of that luck if you've been putting the work in. So 100%, I feel like if you're moving towards something and you're working towards something, it does seem to work out in the way that it's supposed to.
Yeah. Have you ever had contact with Mr. Drake at all since you've moved on or had your own business?
Do you know what? He is like against a lot of technology and things like this. So I can't seem to find him, but I'm spending more and more time in Oxford. So I'm hoping that I bump into him somewhere, because he lives near to my parents. So I'd love to tell him what I'm up to and what I'm doing. And yeah, I stayed in contact with him for a bit. It's just recently it's fallen off.
Yeah, it's just always interesting. Yeah. Yeah, because I say I've done a couple of posts about teaching and what I've learned, and you know I always tag my one in there because I know she's on there. But I don't know. I like to say thank you. Hopefully that they love to know that
I should do that. Yeah, I love that. I love that idea. No, thank you for that.
Because it has a big influence, and a lot of the podcast guests have spoke about coaches, parents, senseis.
Yeah.
And teachers, you know, and I think it has such a big part to play, such an influence. So if we can find those people that truly believe in us, don't let them go. Hold on tight.
Funny enough, actually, I've actually got a draft post for LinkedIn to talk about this, talk about Mr. Drake, but I need to find him so I can tag him before I post that.
Or just post it anyway, and you can write him a nice little note later.
Yeah.
So what has, you know, being a runner, there is a lot of elements in sport. What has running and being an athlete specifically taught you about your finances, and then also allowing you to coach in it as well?
Yeah, so I've actually thought about this a lot even before we mentioned this on the podcast, and that's why I was so excited about talking about. There's so many transferable skills, especially when like we're talking about long distance running, because it's not just about going for it. There's so much strategy and planning that has to go into it before you actually go into your performance. So a big one is the delayed gratification in long distance running. It's not the first thing I put in my notes, but I think I want to start there, because that pace that you have to maintain, and the finish line is so far away. You know you're going to get there, but you have to maintain that amount of energy that you have, right? And, you know, you're going to get to a certain point where you can sprint the last, 100 meters or whatever. But that delayed gratification is huge. So yeah, I'd say that's the biggest transferable skill, because in your finances, that's huge, right? Like, especially with investing, I coach people on and mentor people through their investment journey, and it's a long game. Like, you know, depending on how much you have to put in, you know, you're consistently putting into the market, and you're not really going to see huge returns until at least like 5. I always say, like, I don't want anyone to think before 5 years in terms of returns. Of course, you can have like my clients had some amazing returns last year because we've had such a good year. The stock market went up 25%. It's not always going to be like that though, and so maintaining that consistency and continuing to invest even when the market's down, it takes a lot of willpower. And to get through your emotions, to not pull your investments out, just know that at the end it's going to work out. Very few people have that mentality and that mindset, and that's why only few people win in the stock market.
Yeah. So if we were using an example of my friend who went out the blocks and everybody was cheering for him, but then collapsed after one lap.
Yeah.
So that delayed gratification, how would you then describe somebody playing that same way in the stock market?
I'd say if you have like, people think you can't start investing until you have a certain amount of money to invest. Absolutely not true. Like, don't wait until you can invest £1,000 a month. Obviously, I work I worked in investment management, so I am talking high net worth, but that's just an example. Don't wait till you have £100. Don't wait till you have £500. Invest what you can. Start with £25, start with £30, and see where that goes. Like, building that habit is so important. And the same I suppose in the case of your friend, say he had £100, you can put it all into the market straight away, or you can stagger it depending on how you want to invest and what strategy you want to go for.
Yeah.
Does that answer the question?
Well, yeah, because the approach then would be more of the the longer distance running. You're phasing out each lap. So yeah, that makes more sense. That's what I'm trying to get. Is that everybody can see the strategy that they can implement. I've seen that number thrown out a lot, £25. Is that the minimum marker, or is that just what people say?
It depends on the account that you have, and it depends on the platform that you're using. So it will vary. There's platforms today that will help you start investing with £1 if that's what you want. And of course, that's not going to change your life, investing £1. But I love that platforms are allowing you to do that, because I don't care about losing £1. I mean, most people don't care about losing £1. I care about losing £25, £100, £1,000. £1, not so much. So I love that it gives you like a flavor to dip your toes in and see that it's not that scary. So oftentimes I'll actually do it with a client just to show you like it's not that scary, just because of all the myths that people have about investing and the stock market. But say, for example, you opened an ISA on a particular platform, the minimum might be £25. That's why I wasted £25.
Yeah.
And I feel like it's a good amount, because £25, like, you spend £25 just leaving your house for 3 hours. You know what I mean? Like without wanting to. Yeah, like, it's just, especially nowadays, you can't not. So that's why I like saying £25, because it's again, it's not a massive amount. £25 a month is doable for most people.
Definitely. So yeah, I'm a big fan of delayed gratification. I think Amazon Prime's ruined it for a lot of us.
Well, you can click your fingers and press a button and get anything you want. Food, entertainment, whatever you want, you can click a button and get it delivered to your door. And is that convenience good? Yes, in lots of circumstances it is. It's amazing. But then you're right, it's changed our mentality on like delayed gratification, how important that is as well.
Yeah, we're a now culture, aren't we? When everything now, and if it's not working, things aren't working, we do forget the whole process. I've spoke about it before that, if my water stops working, it's the end of the world, right? This is the worst system in the world, but you forget the hundreds of thousands of things that has to work to get me clean water every single day. Wow, we forget about that. It's been broken for 1 minute. This is terrible. And we forget about it. And I think delaying it, and also that win then, right? Maybe that was something for you in the running. That win takes longer to get. So that feeling is stronger. With the hockey season, we used to play like 50, 60 odd game seasons. that's a lot of games you've got to get through to be able to get a trophy at the end. Wow. So I think that sport can, unless you're doing 100 meters and it's over in seconds, but there's a lot of process and a lot of work and concentration that goes into gaining that good feeling. And that's what I've loved about finding index funds and investment is I know one day this is going to pay off and it's going to be worth it. I'll just have to wait a little bit.
Yeah. And you can easily see that, right? Like you can just go onto Google right now, anyone listening, and just type in an index and type in from inception and just see where the graph goes. It's always going up. There might be dips, but it's always on an upward trajectory. And so if you're invested for long enough, if you don't let emotions get in the way, you will reap those rewards. Because another thing is it's your portfolio over time will appreciate, and with compounding, any fluctuations will be felt less. Yeah. So for example, my portfolios have been invested for so long now, fluctuations don't hurt me as much as they did 10 years ago. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. So for anybody that is listening that was like me and didn't really understand it, index funds was something that interested me. I heard about it through Warren Buffett, which a lot of people have probably heard about. If you can just put index funds into like simple layman's terms to somebody who isn't invested might go, actually, that I feel a lot safer doing that. What is an index fund?
Yeah, so I'll take it a step back just to make it even clearer. When you invest in the stock market, it's basically an exchange of you're buying a share or other financial instrument. So there's different asset classes that you can invest in. There's equities, bonds, index funds, lots of different types of, and it gets more complicated with futures and options and all that. But when you're looking at the reason why you want all these different asset classes is you want to have a diversified portfolio so your risk is spread. So an index fund is an amazing thing because instead of worrying about all these companies and buying stocks like every day and trading, like even for someone who's trained at a very high level, it's very hard to keep on top of that. For example, Tesla, when it shot up, no one knew that Tesla was going to shoot up and other tech companies were going to completely collapse. So the amazing thing about index funds, which is basically a basket of stocks, you can have index funds in different asset classes. So equities, you can have an equity index, you can have a fixed income one. So it has different, you can have sometimes a collection. So it's a basket of stocks. So in that one investment, you have sometimes 4,000 and more companies. So your risk is spread. It's like buying a box of chocolate. How I like to describe it is you buy at Christmas, you buy like a box of quality streets or like roses or whatever. And everyone likes, there's some that everyone will like you'll like one of them and I might hate that one, but I might like a different one. It's exactly the same as an index fund. So different market conditions are going to affect different companies and industries in different ways. So if you have a collection of different types of sweets, everyone's going to like them. If you have a collection of different companies or industries or asset classes, the stock market is going to favor at some point one or the other. So your risk is diversified and balanced.
And who doesn't understand chocolates? I love that terminology. It was actually Disney that taught me a little bit about finance. We were at Epcot and there was this little section that we went into, and basically it was you were pigs and you had to hide your money from the fox, the big bad fox. And it taught you to put your money in different places because if the fox found one, he didn't find everything. And I just love simplifying it in layman's terms and putting it in people's languages, because I think that breaks down a barrier of talking about finances. Not all these scary fancy words. It's like, let's talk about chocolates. Everybody understands chocolates.
Exactly. That's what I love about index funds as well. It makes it so accessible to invest in the stock market, because like buying individual companies, as I said, even for people that are trained at high level, even it's hard for them. So imagine it's like a full-time job. So people shy away from it, or they don't do very well, and then they shy away from it. So index funds just makes it so easy for people to invest, and I love that.
Yeah, definitely. So we've got delayed gratification, which is a big carryover into finances. Is there anything else that you took away from sport into finance?
Yeah, so I'd say there's two more, and then you can decide which one we go into. Discipline and consistency, massive in my sporting career, and definitely yours and anyone's, and then massive in your finances as well.
Yeah. So let's go discipline, actually, because I was thinking of something that aligned with delayed gratification, but I always remember this was another friend that I was racing, a close friend. And again, I thought I was going to absolutely wipe the floor with him. This was 1500 and he was here the whole race. And in my head, I'm like, again, is this guy, has he been practicing? Is he better? Have I not given him enough credit? And I was probably about 200 meters out on the curve.
Did he beat you?
And I kicked. I went, and he went as well. And I'm like, oh no! So I stopped. I didn't kick it. I came back to pace. I'm like, oh no! Like he might have me here. And something kicked in as I got kind of around the top of the bend. I was going to I knew where I needed to go. I knew I was capable, and I went, and he had nothing. I took that last bit out of him. So I had that discipline in that race to trust the strategy,
that was strategic. I was going to say
to delay that. I could have just kicked at 200 and maybe I would have lost it. And I think again that there links in quite well with the delayed gratification and the discipline to stick to what to trust it, to not let external factors take you away from your game plan. So tell us a little bit more about what you learned discipline wise.
Yeah, so for me, the practicing my sort of strategy, how I was going to go about it, how I was going to keep my pace, also knowing like what I was going to eat beforehand, how I was going to sleep beforehand. There's so many different factors, and we've touched on it already, that played a part on that day. And making sure that, because anything can happen, but making sure you've ticked all the right boxes, you've had a good sleep, and you've had a good stretch, and you've had a good meal, and you're hydrated, and all those things are so important in contributing to that day. And it's exactly the same with your finances as well. Like there's so many different things that contribute to you being able to invest consistently and reach that delayed gratification point. So, for example, like being consistent with, being disciplined with making those contributions every month. When I wasn't earning a lot, I didn't want to put £100 in my ISA. That's the last thing I wanted to do. I just started my career. I just started making money in my early 20s. Why would I want to put money away for the future? Like when I'm old. So having that discipline to consistently contribute, knowing that delayed gratification will come in and you'll win in the end, is massive in investing.
So because it makes a lot of sense, right? Because you were talking about your daily routine as an athlete. I know I was very regiment. My whole waking day was based around ice hockey and playing well on Saturday and Sunday. So and you can see it, right? If you started to be erratic, irregular, and not consistent, again, the other word that we're going to be using here, if we're not doing that with our finances, why would that be different to if we were doing that with our own well-being? If we were waking up different times each day, different breakfasts, different routes to work, it's going to cause chaos.
Exactly. And I see it today. I'm sure you do too. Like I do weight training now, and I'm obsessed with it. And I know that like being disciplined with my workouts is so important. Like how I sleep is so important. Like obviously I'm not doing it for any race, or I'm not competing, but just for me to have a good workout this morning, I need to make sure that I slept properly, I hydrated, I had a good meal, I'm eating well, I'm not having McDonald's every day, like I track my macros. There's so many things that go into it, and it's all down to discipline.
And I think that links with routine, though, doesn't it? Because to have a routine is what the human loves because it requires less energy. It's a habit that's formed. Our brain doesn't require as much energy to execute it, so it's more than happy to do so. When we break that routine, it's going to happen. We need to be ready to adapt, but then we have to use more energy. So if we're not in that disciplined routine, most of the time, we're constantly expending energy that could be used elsewhere.
Yeah, no, 100%. I feel it. Like, I'm in my 30s now, so I feel it when I break that routine. I definitely feel it in my workouts, and it's annoying. I don't like it. It's frustrating. So I know how important it is to stay on routine.
So I think a lot of people will kind of almost say with discipline, well, yeah, with finances, it's a no-brainer, right? It's that makes sense. But then obviously that brings in the consistency element, and I think all three are really merged. So what would you suggest somebody to do with their finance to allow them to be in a position to be more disciplined and be consistent with that as well?
Yeah. Well, you say it's easy, it's like a no-brainer, but you're like, finances and investing especially, you always think, oh, I'll do it next month, or I'll do it when XYZ happens. So people do put it off a lot, and that's where you have to be disciplined and thinking, no, I've got to do this. And for me, what I like to get to a point where we set up a system with my clients. But one of the easiest things that you want to do is automate your investments. You want to automate 10, 20%. If you're following a good allocation of your income, 10 to 20%, if not more, should be allocated to your investments for future you. And that should go out of your account without you having to think about it. You want to take yourself out of the equation as much as possible, right? Markets down 25%, doesn't matter. You've already invested. It's happening behind the scenes. If you had to go in and make that transaction into your investments and you see the markets down, you're not going to want to do it. Especially at the start of your journey, when you haven't realized that the peaks and troughs, actually it all does balance out and go upwards, you're not going to want to do it. So having it automated is the ultimate way to achieve your financial goals.
Yeah, I would 100% agree, because that's what I do now. It's a direct debit, and it's what I call set and forget. For me to get to that point, the saying, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. Well, I was led to the water, and then I was able to drink because it was very simple for me to finish up. So if somebody is looking to get consistency with their financing, get started, what advice could you kind of give them today?
So it depends on what their starting point is, but what I really would recommend is people understand and have awareness. My coach was talking about this the other day, actually, like to help someone build awareness in whatever aspect you're talking about is huge. Like if you can just become aware of where your money is going. So once you get paid, where does your money go? A lot of people won't be able to answer that question. If you're able to answer that question confidently, you can then start making changes to, okay, so fixed expenses, this percentage goes to that. Investments, this percentage goes to that. Savings, and make it like so easy for yourself. It's easier when you do it like that. But the first step is to get really clear, aware of where your money is going. And then build some goals. Like, what are your financial goals? Like, what are you working towards? Get really excited about that and think, okay, like this is what I want to do that for. And I don't mean, when I ask people, I have calls with people and they'll be like, I want to build an emergency fund. Yes, that's an absolute no-brainer. You want to do that, but why? Think about what is that going to provide for you? Stability, security. Think beyond the surface level. Get really excited about those things. If I have an emergency fund, I call it an FU fund. You have that emergency fund. Someone speaks to you in a negative way at work. You hate your job. Give your notice in and move on. Life is too short for you to be in those situations that you want to be in. Obviously, like, everyone's gonna have bad days, but if you're really in a situation that you want to be in, you're in a relationship that you want to be in, that emergency fund, that just is so boring when you think of an emergency fund, but think about what that provides you. Think about investing. Like, what is that going to do to your life? Get really excited about that, and that's when you're really going to start taking it seriously.
It's back to that purpose and passion again. You've got to love what you do for you to do it. obviously you are an athlete, you're still performing in the gym, you're into finances. One topic that comes up an awful lot, more so at the top level, is you see a lot of athletes who have abundance of money go bankrupt. Even for me, when I finished my career as a semi-pro, I was working full-time and earning a reasonably decent wage from being a semi-professional. I was investing none. Okay, I had money aside, rainy day fund, but I wasn't investing or ISAs or anything.
Yeah.
Do you ever work with athletes that are in this position? Have you got any stories that you've seen this in real life?
Yeah, so in one of the places that I worked, we had some quite high level sportsmen, some footballers that everyone will know. I think it's so common. And what we forget actually is it's so easy to throw around stats, and then like 70% of NBA superstars and athletes and they go bankrupt within 5 years. It's so easy to throw those things out, but actually, and you'll know this because you were way higher as an athlete, but like there's a lot of money that goes into maintaining your lifestyle. So yes, they're making a high income, but your expenditures are huge. Like you're thinking you've probably got a private chef at some point, if you're thinking of those high levels, you're having to, you've probably got an ice bath and all these things at home. Like your sporting career requires you to, have quite high expenses. So yeah, it's so easy to throw around those stats. I think hindsight's a wonderful thing, isn't it? Like we can always look back and be like, I wish I started earlier. And that's the amazing thing about investing, is everyone thinks that. I think what I would say is an awareness and education around how important it is just to start. When you're in your 20s and you're making all this huge amounts of money, of course you're not thinking about investing for the future, because you don't realize that, this is a short-lived career and this money that I'm making isn't going to be forever. So having that education to put some money aside, I don't know if you watched the David Beckham documentary, but they talk about, so Neil, is it Neil? He's like, I was saving into my pension. Everyone thought I was crazy. Was it Neil? Who was it that was talking? Who said that? One of them said that anyway, and everyone thought it was crazy. But I think it's so important. Like no matter what career you're in and what level of income you have, you've got to be putting some away for future you. You have to. It's just I think more education needs to be put around that, especially with the increased aging population. It's so important.
Yeah, no, it's interesting you say the expenses part, because I started to smile there, and I was like, when I thought about it, it's like we were eating on the road a lot, expensive. I was buying all the gizmos to test my power in the gym, and and like I said, if you're trying to find your 1%, which sport's all about, is trying to find that little bit extra than your opponent or whoever you're competing against. And it does cost if you want to do it, whether that's gym membership or personal trainer that I bought off my own back. I paid at one point for my own rehab to get back on the ice quicker.
It's just my hobby. Like weight training is a massive hobby of mine now, and even that, like I've got the best Theragun. I always have to have the latest Theragun. I spend money on like all my. I take whey protein. It costs a lot, and I'm just doing it like because I love it. So if your like ability to perform depends on it, of course you're going to throw money at it, and you're going to have like the best thing. So.
I've got my own theory on this, and you said more education. Now, the most obvious place to educate would be in schools. You start young, you learn young. I have my own thought process on why it isn't there. You care to share why you think it isn't involved in schools as much?
So why? Controversial, obviously, and I'll lead on to that. But I think everyone talks about financial education should be taught at schools, and I appreciate where people are coming from, and to an extent I agree. Of course it should be taught young. Your subconscious is born by 8 years old, and so if you don't have some sort of element of what money is, then it's going to carry on your entire life until you address it. But here's the thing, if it were to be taught in schools, it'd likely be funded by banks or some sort of financial institution, and therefore they'd be very selective of what you're told, because they they kind of need you to not know some things, right? Because like the whole workforce relies on you not knowing certain things. So there's definitely a controversial element to it. But I think even if it was taught at schools, it wouldn't be taught in the ways that I would like it to be taught because of who would be providing the education. And secondly, you're so young at school, you don't have the resources to implement it. Right? So I think as much as it should play a role in school, I think it's got to start at home with your parents and more. So education, yes, getting them involved in money, but watching your parents. There's a really amazing quote that I love. And it goes, children will do as they see, not as they're told. So you see your parents with a good relationship with money. You see, mum has her own money. They've got a nice relationship around money. She's not having to ask dad to go and buy us McDonald's. Or these things are going to play a huge role in shaping that child's psychology around money.
Yeah. Okay. So if we have got parents listening, even if we haven't got parents listening, if it's just somebody who knows they need a better relationship with their finances, what one piece of advice, just one of your hot tips, could you give them to help them get started?
I'd say get them involved. Like what, with the kids, you mean?
Just for yourself. So if you're saying it's a kind of a show, an action-based thing, so not necessarily ignoring the kids. What if I wasn't doing anything and I'm a parent, what could I do to have a better starting point with my finances?
I think the first thing, awareness. What's your relationship with money, and how are you bringing that to your family life? How are you talking about it with your significant other? How does she or he feel about it? Awareness of phrases that you say, they're going to play a huge role in how your child thinks of money. Even if you say things like, money doesn't grow on trees, money's the root of all evil, we're really strapped for cash, can't do this, can't do that. The way you speak about money, awareness, just build an awareness of how you're doing that, and then try to make it more healthy. Or think about the impact it's having on the kids.
Yeah, I saw a reel once, and it was all these kind of sayings, and it was the money is the root of all evil. So if the money is the root of all evil, why do churches ask for it? I like that one. There was a few of them like that, but I like that one. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Amazing. So that's kind of almost like communication as well as awareness, and I'm a big believer of writing things down. You can just write down financial goals, like you said, the expenses. These are all simple tasks, but for our brain, they aren't always. So you've got to find that easy entry point to get started. Sadia, absolutely amazing. Thank you so much. I think that's given our audience a lot to think about, if absolutely anything. If anybody does want to work with you, just to follow your journey, where can they find you?
So 2 places, LinkedIn, Sadia Ali, and then Instagram at Wealth with Sadia. Connect with me, and you'll see the resources that I have. And if you want to work with me, we can have a conversation about that too.
Yeah, and I think that conversation is a huge starting point. That's where it started for me, was just having a conversation. The conversation I had was free, but it provided me so much that it gave me a really good starting point, and I can see a better future now than where I was potentially heading. And I think that's what it's all about, is just being open and having that conversation. Money is very normal. We use it every day. There's not the devil.
There's a plan and options for wherever you are. So you don't have to be in the most perfect position to seek help. Wherever you are, try and get the right support if you want it.
You've just got to start.
Exactly.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for coming in. Really appreciate it. Thank you to anybody that has listened. If you've taken anything away from today's podcast, please share it. Please share it with a friend, send it to them direct, put it on your Instagram story, whatever it might be, because you just never know who needs to hear this information. Just the same way as Sadia's PE teacher and professor or teacher guided her in the same way. You just don't know who will need to hear this. So we really appreciate all your support. And remember, there is always another game. Take care, everyone.